I did name it that thing I was talking to you about, Buttons. Reactions and discussions.
Very nice.
Hello, stream. And people listening.
Good evening.
So yeah, we'll give everyone a minute to see that we're doing werewolf shit tonight.
Heck yeah. Sort of.
Sort of. We're talking about werewolf shit tonight.
We are indeed.
How exciting.
A little bit sad Dangle can't be here for this. I really wanted to see if I could poke and prod him into telling us more about Javier and maybe some of the other werewolves we've seen around Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
We'll just bug him about it later.
Yep. It's not like there's not someone else who has werewolves in their game here.
Nope. Not at all. Because we don't know anything about that.
Nope. What clan do you think he is?
I think he told us at one point, but we're kind of like, waiting for the book to come out. If I had to guess, probably either a Bone Gnaw or maybe Red Talon.
Nope. He's not the Heart one, whatever it's called.
Heart Wardens?
Yeah, he is not that. Or whatever I don't know. He's probably not something you would expect, but it actually does make sense with the reasoning behind it.
Children of Gaia?
Mm-hmm. Not that nice.
Didn't think he was.
Mm-mm. Hell no. He's a little bit more on the kind of fighter side.
Not a Silver Fang, surely.
No. Oh, no. They would never...
I was gonna say...
They would never lower themselves.
I was gonna say, how did she pull that off?
They would never lower themselves to dealing with a worm.
No.
Couple more left.
It's
fine. It's fine. Nothing will go wrong with not knowing.
Black Fury? Oh.
Nope.
I mean, I could just go down the whole list.
You could, but I'll keep saying no if you do that.
Exactly.
Just for principle.
That's it. I have decided he's a Black Spiral dancer. Final answer.
I mean, that thematically could make sense from what I understand happens to them in W5. But no.
Oh, we should probably preface that Werewolf 5e is not a continuation of W20. It is a reboot.
All of the
which is why a lot of people,
I believe, the 5th edition stuff for World of Darkness currently is a reboot of it. Nothing is a continuation.
Yeah. Which is exactly what I thought, but I saw people on several different social media platforms, cough, cough, getting very upset about how much has changed and be like, I'm going back to W20. And it's like, okay, but...
Okay, sure. Let's talk about Hunter. There's no more mystical powers that you get from, like, what was it, the angels or whatever? Like, that doesn't exist anymore. That's just gone. You have no magical special abilities. You're just a person. Vampire, they got rid of every 6+ discipline, so, like, they changed up tons of lore of the clans. They changed up a lot of stuff about it. And Werewolf, I'm sure, is the same way. I didn't really know much about W20. but they got rid of several clans. They got rid of problematic things through it, which will go on. And oh, hey, spoilers, by the way, for this if you don't want them. And I guess for the World of Darkness in general. But they've changed up so much in 5th edition for World of Darkness that it can't be anything but a reboot.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, people are gonna people.
People will people, I suppose. So
I personally like most of the changes.
I don't know what most of them are, but maybe you can point them out as we get there if you know about them. Which we are not masters of this. None of us actually really played W20, V20, M20. None of us played those. H20. None of us played them.
I read through Werewolf 20, but I never actually got to play it.
Yeah, and we've picked things up here and there, and we have integrated some of the less problematic things into our games. Which is fine. The splats are built so you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But shall we begin?
Sure.
I love this little intro they give right here, and I kind of want to read it just because it's so cool. On page 2.
Mm-hmm.
Gaia is dying, the ices melt while the seas swell, heat rises while the forests wither. Gee, what does that sound like right now? Extinction threatens millions in favor of the few. The Guru were like shapeshifters torn between rage and spirit, between wolf and man, and champions of the Earth Mother have failed. The apocalypse is here. Yet a new generation of Guru now call upon their rage to confront the forces of destruction, avarice, and greed ravaging the Earth Mother. With tooth and claw, the Guru will wrest her back from the brink of death or follow her enemies to the grave. Will you answer their howl? What legends will the Guru sing of you? When will you rage? And I think that right there tells you everything you need to know. A new generation of Guru. It's new. It's not a continuation.
Definitely. Oh man, where to even start with all this?
Yeah. Well, the best place to start is the beginning.
Sure.
Oh god, I can't get over how beautiful the art is in this book.
Yeah, definitely taking a second to shout out the artists that worked on this.
I don't have their names, but like, holy shit, it's amazing. Yeah. I will say, for the little bit of reading I did, and I said this to you guys earlier, a lot of it like almost looks like it's written in like a meme-ish format. We'll see later with the stats. Like, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that, but this book seems to play it a lot looser than like Vampire and Hunter did with descriptions of things.
Yeah, it's purposefully written to be sort of like, I don't want to say like tongue of the common man thing, because that sounds really academic and weird, but it's a lot more rough and down to earth in its mannerism,
right?
Which fits the werewolf thing.
It reminds me a lot of how the Anarch book is written, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not sure how I really feel about that, because that one was really difficult to read through and like to take in. It's cool that it's written in like a in-universe format, but so
yeah,
maybe this one feels a little half and half, so it's probably a little bit easier done like that. You can talk. I'm just scrolling while I try to find a good place to start.
Well, I think a good place to start is on page 11 here, where it asks, what do werewolves do? And I think this really encapsulates the core difference between W5 and W20. Opening line: the most immediate things that werewolves do is fight to take back what has been lost. war is over. They're losing ground. It's going poorly, but they're still fighting to take back what was taken from them, as opposed to in W20 when it was very much the fight is on, the war is here. What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah, this is seems to be the cleanup afterwards, or something akin to that.
Mm-hmm.
So what will you do now? I do like that they say here, over the course of the story, you are building your own legend. That's really cool. Whereas Vampire has been about like survival and making sure you survive, and Hunter is obviously getting rid of what hunts the humans. This one is just building up yourself.
There's a whole world waiting for you. What are you going to do with it?
Yep. And of course, we have to shout out the Umbra, which sounds so freaking cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's something that's definitely changed. There's more about it in the book as compared to what was outright given to us in W20, but also it's harder to like traverse now. Because back in W20, you used to be able to slip in and out just like that.
Right. When I was,
as long as you had the right tools to do it, or the right abilities to do it, of course. But
right, when I was looking up to see if Kat from my game could have a werewolf ghoul, because spoiler, she's got a werewolf ghoul. That's something I read. Like it was insanely difficult because they could just slip into the Umbra and get away.
Mm-hmm. And it was very commonly used to travel great distances relatively quickly, get in and out of places they weren't supposed to be, all that fun stuff. And no, not anymore. The Umbra's shifting to reflect the damage done to the physical world.
Which is awesome, but I think we'll probably touch more on the Umbra later, or in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is just kind of the overarch.
Yeah.
See. I do love that they say this here, and I'm probably going to read another bit of a paragraph still on page 13 at this point, or was it 11? 11 on the actual book. 13 on the PDF. The storytelling, games, and role-playing. It has a couple of paragraphs there, but I really like this bottom one. Most importantly, and making them distinct from traditional told to you media, storytelling games are about making choices. The group of players and its storyteller collectively tell tales of environmental apocalypse, spirits, secrets, the ravening monsters human perceive, and complex personalities motivating them. It's specific to werewolf here, but I love the concept of that in the overall world of darkness. Because we've played D&D, we've played Call of Cthulhu. Those are games of choice, but less than this game. This game, like, legitimately, I'll use me as an example. Like, when I ask you guys in our games, what do you want to do? It's because my game is not railroaded. If you want to sit in your havens and do paperwork or work on your music, then that's what we'll do, and then we'll build off of that. It'll be more difficult, but that's what we'll do because you aren't out doing things. Doesn't mean the world's not changing, but that's the choice of your character, is to not engage with the world. And so you won't see what's going on.
I will say one, and stop me if I'm moving too far ahead, too fast, or anything, but one thing in particular that I personally have always liked about Werewolf in general is the cosmology. I love the triadic balance between the wild, the weaver, and the worm. The chaos and destruction, the stasis, and then the creation and rebirth. Not in that order, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You've what?
Yeah. No, sorry. I just thought someone was going to say something. I personally have, I really like seeing the way belief and that whole spiritual mindset plays into role-playing games and stuff, because it kind of gives a little bit of insight as to what seems to matter in a setting. Like, these are the big powers at play. How are we going to see that play out? And so the whole cycle of chaos and destruction and rebirth is sort of the core tenet of the whole werewolf thing, playing out against the backdrop of the capitalist hellscape that all these things have created and destroyed.
Yeah. You've been quiet for a minute, Nen. Any thoughts on what we've talked about so far?
I'm mostly trying to understand everything in the lexicon.
Oh yeah, that is probably a fair point.
Because there's a lot of new words in here that you gotta keep in mind for the games.
Yeah.
Right. I was talking about like what we've talked about so far.
Mm-hmm.
No, not really yet.
And that is a fair point. Getting used to the verbiage of a World of Darkness game is always a step that you're going to have to take. Are there any concepts in particular that stand out to you, or that you don't really think you get yet? Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot if this is your first time looking at it.
I get most of it is just trying to keep it all in mind for when we start playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely have to figure out how to pronounce Huglux or whatever it is.
Which one?
Haugla. Okay.
Hoglass, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I've heard it pronounced. And you're going to hear a bunch of different pronunciations from a bunch of different people, so don't get too self-conscious about that.
Probably good to try and keep in mind for continuality within our games.
We'll get more on those later, but the Harano and Hoglask are really interesting concepts that at least Dangle and I have not a lot because we've been busy, but they've been brought up a little bit for cross-splat stuff.
And they're also brand new to Werewolf 5.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get on what they are later. I like that they're mentioning the Weaver, Wild, and Worm here. Like in this book, so that'll be fun. We've mentioned it in Dangle's game, but it's very interesting. I'm glad the concept made its way into here.
A very important part of things. True.
Moving on into the chapter 1.
Yeah, I'm pulling through. I like that they included it. This first chapter kind of gives a little context to how things got to where they are.
Yeah. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Vampire did that, as to how we moved from into Modern Knights into V5.
You are in fact correct. There was quite a bit of, okay, this is how it is. And I think this is them learning from that lesson.
Well, technically, I think the bridge was Beckett's jihad journal.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard that say like that is what's technically bridging the gap, but it was still written for V20 and wasn't like brought into publication like the Book of Nod was.
Yeah, it's an ancillary book that they'd have to buy on top of all the other splats that they put out at that time, and a lot of people just didn't pick up on it.
Yeah. I do want to get it, neither here nor there, but much later down the line.
Beckett's a very interesting character.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, here, I've been scrolling down. I'm on page 20 in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not going to read word for word here. We're just going to kind of go over topics and discuss our thoughts. But I like how they have a little blurb here for the cosmology and collapse, where they talk about the triad, which is the cosmic cycle, and the three parts, the wild, weave, and worm. Which is really cool, because if you guys, whoever ends up listening to this, don't know, the wild is creation and change, weaver is order from chaos, and the worm is entropy and destruction, which in and of itself, the triad, the three of them, like, play into each other and keep balanced. But something went wrong with the worm.
Something went very wrong with the worm, and now it's affecting the other two as well.
Mm-hmm.
Weaver's going mad trying to keep things as they are, and the wild is suffering because of all of it.
Yes. Yes. Which is really interesting, because they have a sentence here that says, Guru despised the fact that rampant, unmoderated consumption feeds the worm, pushing it into despair, which is cool. I like that they're touching on why the world is the way it is, instead of, here is how it is, there you go.
Definitely.
Thoughts then?
Mostly thinking about like how this played into the previous games. I'm trying to come up with thoughts about how that occurred, because I think other games have mostly touched on like medieval times and stuff. So I was wondering how the Garu mostly dealt with it back then.
That well, that was trying to compare the Guru and the Vampire Society, Kindred Society. It's like comparing apples and pears. Yeah, they're both fruits, but they're two completely different fruits. You'll have I would recommend going back to Werewolf 20 and reading more about the individual clans, because part of the biggest difference between werewolves and vampires is their social structures are very, I don't want to say traditional, but very they're very pre-modern. They don't really have an equivalent of the ivory tower or the anarchs.
What is it? The Silver Fangs were kind of the rulers of the Guru nation, because there was a thing called the Guru Nation,
Yeah.
And I don't know if it went back to the like medieval times or whatever, but the whole Guru thing was ruled by the Silver Fangs. The Shadow Lords were their enforcers, pretty much, and assassins. And then the other clans somewhat fell in line and some didn't. Some made problems and they were taken care of if they needed to be. The humans weren't causing a lot of destruction, so that part wasn't a problem. The worm was really more powerful kind of than it was now, so that was a problem. And there was a lot of warring between the two, from what I understand and can recall.
Yeah, there was a lot more inter-clan politics back then than there are now. Now it's it's more of a, it's like that whole old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of a thing. By and large, the Guru by W5 have kind of put a lot of their issues to one side and said, look, we've got bigger problems here. And I mean, there's still going to be petty squabbles. I mean, like, look at what happened to the cult of Fenris, which we can get to later, but it's more, we got to deal with capitalism now. Because factories didn't exist back in the 1300s.
No, they did not. I'm sorry, I was laughing. I was continuing to scroll, and I got to their page 22, which is, I'm loving everything that I'm skimming through so far. It gives a really interesting look into the Guru mindset of things, which is really cool. But they have a thing here labeled Secret Truths, which is great. The world of darkness is full of secret truth. Mundane threats such as like cops or malfunctioning construction equipment might actually be hostile spirits affecting it.
Hey, that sounds familiar.
It gets better. I'll read this one. Being a monster oneself also requires secrecy. Honey, I'm a werewolf is rarely a message a spouse or partner entertains eagerly, assuming they survive their partner's first change.
Can I just interject to say that is one thing I genuinely appreciate change-wise about 5e is
W5.
W5.
Well, I guess it is technically their 5th edition, so.
Yeah. You could have back in like W20, you could have teenagers, children experiencing their first change, but now they specify that it's not till they've reached maturity.
There is an entire thing what I really want to touch heavy on later about the change and how they've restructured how one becomes a werewolf. And so that one I really want to touch on later.
Yeah.
Once we get to it, because we're still scrolling through. But yeah, I found that sentence hysterical.
It is.
Yeah. And then they're going into like aesthetics, I guess. I don't know. That's odd.
Setting the tone, I think, is more their goal with this, with the whole punk gothic city versus country. What's the Umbra become? What places of power look like?
I guess that makes sense. It's just odd that they just labeled it gothic punk.
Yeah. I think they're trying to pull away from the mainline idea, because there was a popular thing going around where people were describing the werewolves as eco-terrorists.
I have heard that.
And I think they're trying to pull away from that and say, see, we're more than just this. Which I get.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Then the next part's just like a big description and like in universe what a werewolf would do, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how they're going into how the countryside is just as bad as the cities in regards to like Pentax, which again, it's a big thing for the Guru, which we'll touch on later. But just remember that name because it's a big one.
Pentax.
But yeah, it's interesting that they're giving those, so it's not just, oh, you're out roaming the countryside and it's better than the city.
Nope. It's spreading here too.
Yeah, like right here. Even forests, those symbols of untrammeled nature, are steadily replaced by tree farms devoid of biodiversity or animal habitats. There is no place to escape the poisonous touch of avarice. I like that. I like that they're stating that outright.
Yeah. And as someone who grew up in a farming community, I totally see Pentex in like a lot of big modern farming practices because of monocropping and how expensive it is to get started and how deep into someone else's pockets you have to get to just be able to get seed in the ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and a lot of the seeds are now modified to where you can't do a harvest out of seeds you collect yourself. They have to be genetically modified ones. I mean, there are the heirloom seeds and everything like that, but few and far between and hard to get.
And when you do get them, they're incredibly expensive.
Yes. They have so many good sentences in here that, like, I don't want to read the entire book, but there's a whole thing here about drawing distinctions about the companies versus people and things like that. And then they go into highlight that Werewolf is an emotional game. They're creatures of passion and rage and fighting and just high emotions and high stakes for that type of thing, which is really cool because the 3 games so far that have been remade, Vampire, you have emotions, but they're dulled. You're a monster, you're inhuman, and while you might want to be human still, it takes effort to be that. Humans, you're just scared and want to kill everything. You're immortal. Oh shit. But this one, I like that they go into, like, it's a game of passion.
It really is. And I also appreciate that they talk about making the distinction between corporations and individuals, because that is something that will also come into play very heavily later on in the book.
Humans are responsible for their own actions. The worm is a manifestation of greed and not the origin of it. Humans have made the choice for it to be the way it is. Basically is what it boils down to. But not every human. Hashtag not all humans. Let's get it. Let's get it going. Hashtag not all humans.
Add that one to the list of things to make things with.
But now I think we've reached the Umbra.
We have. This is probably the part that I am most excited for.
This is really, really interesting. Before we really delve into this and the little bit I understand about what the Umbra is, I know you guys don't play World of Warcraft, but for the people who have played World of Warcraft, it really makes me think of the Emerald Dream, which I don't know which one came first, honestly, like, date-wise, WoW or, this. But
Werewolf the Apocalypse?
not Werewolf, just, like, World of Darkness in general. but yes, specifically werewolf. Because the Emerald Dream is so the in-game universe world is called Azeroth. The Emerald Dream is literally its wild, uninhabited, or supposed to be uninhabited and unhinged nature reflection. It is what would happen if nothing controlled nature, or if pockets of it were controlled, or pockets of it were corrupted. Like, it's really cool, but it really makes me think of the Umbra.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the game, there's spots where where the dream bleeds through, and it's just this like insane, crazy growth and everything like that, and the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
But now you can continue because you know more about the Umbra than I do. I just got excited because the Emerald Dream, one of my favorite concepts in WoW.
I'm just so excited that the Umbra has been kind of connected a little bit deeper to the physical world, and the whole reason that it is changing is because of the changes we are seeing in the physical world, in Gaia and the wild and all that fun stuff. And as the Guru lose touch with nature, they're losing touch with the Umbra as well, and it's harder for them to traverse. It's harder for them to traverse accurately. Things change a lot faster. Things are far more dangerous and less likely to be helpful. Or it takes a lot more persuasion for things to be helpful, because this is the land of spirits, and that is a big part of werewolf, is the conversing with and dealing with spirits.
I love these examples they give. I'm sorry, continue. I thought I was muted.
Go for it.
I just
go for it.
Right there, the blurb stuff, like a city might appear from far away like a living lesion teeming with maggots. Like, that's disgusting and great, because it's basically what the equivalent would be. Like,
the Umbra holds up a mirror to reality and shows it for what it truly is.
These are all just so interesting, and it also makes me think of like the like how the Fey wild in D&D changes and reflects things. Which again, that was one of my favorite things in D&D. You guys had a blast playing, and that little Feywild spot that you got sucked into.
That was so fun.
But what made me think of that was the next one down. The shipwrecked oil tanker may appear like a vast harpoon in Gaia's side, with oil separating as blood, just like oozing oil out of this harpoon in place of a spilled oil tanker. Hashtag
RIP Michigan.
It's not oil, it's diesel, but it's still...
It's the same thing. It might as well be.
Multiple tens of thousands of gallons there. Good job, Michigan.
Yeah, I texted my mom and my sister that, and my mom's immediate response was, well, there goes their ecosystem.
Yeah, it's great, especially because it's in Lake Michigan. Cool. Yay.
Proving the point.
Right? I'm not gonna lie, though. It gives me ideas for a game. Can you imagine having to deal with that as Guru?
No.
Like, I think it was over 40,000 gallons spilled into the lake. Like, fuck dealing with that. Oh my god.
It was so much.
But yeah, it gives me ideas. Anything else that you guys want to say or talk about the Umbra? I know we didn't go super deep into it, but We're not doing like deep dives on anything yet.
The rest of my stuff can wait till we get to the deep dive.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Write them down though so we don't forget them, because I would love to do deep dives on all of the splats. Or like pick something from the splat to do a deep dive on.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing up is Cairns. I'm sorry, Nen, did you have something to say?
Isn't it interesting that even the Garu are having issues with Umbra because it's even recoiling from them?
Well, it's recoiling from them because it's as damaged as the world is, I think. I think that's what
there is. Yeah, there's also a little bit of a mindset in some of the spirits that reside in there's eyes that the Guru are failing at their mission.
I mean,
and they're angry about that.
I mean, they kind of are. The apocalypse came and happened.
Yep.
Oh yeah, there you go. Perhaps this growing impermeability is the legacy of werewolves having failed Gaia, or it's simply a response mechanism to the cruelties happening in the physical world. The shadow trying to tear itself away from which casts it. They talk about shadows there, which I don't know how the Umbra and the Shadowlands, or whatever they call it in V5, are connected. But it's really interesting because I know they used to be very connected. Like there was like 3 levels of it. There was the Deep Umbra, and then the Shadowlands.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is now in their 5th edition. But that's just so fascinating and cool.
And we'll definitely get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, next is cairns, which are places of spiritual energy that are usually the gathering or safe havens for packs of Guru, I believe. Or tribes of Guru, is that what it is?
It's weird. You've got like your clans, and then you've got that's just like your Galestalkers and Bonars and whatever. And then you have what are called septs, which are like all of the local packs come together at one of these cairns and form a sept to protect this place of power and use it as like a tapping point for spiritual power, or to connect with Gaia, easier access to the Umbra in past iterations, at least. I haven't read too much into it in this edition.
I needed to pull something up from what is going on here? In the player's guide for Vampire, they have this new thing for your domain, or your haven, that's called the Furcus. And it's located on veins of the earth or a frayed spot in the veil. Each dot adds to rituals or ceremony dice when using the Furcus. But it makes me wonder if that could also like intermingle with the cairn stuff.
It could, maybe?
Because can you imagine, let's just use Detroit as an example, because Leon lives on a Furcus. That's why he chose to live in that graveyard. Like, this straight up, like, he has a level 3 Furcus. And I had it touch on the Fey stuff, and, like, I guess it would technically be the Dreaming, although it was just some creatures from it. But theoretically, a pack of Guru could go attempt to take that over because it is a place of power. It theoretically could be or become a cairn. Like, that would be cool. Not necessarily like using Leon for that, but just as the example, because it's, to my knowledge, the only NPC so far that has that type of haven. But can you imagine having to deal with a pack of Guru that want to take it over as a cairn?
Mm-hmm. Or on the opposite end of that spectrum, a bunch of vampires banding together to drive some werewolves out in the hopes that they can take over a cairn.
Yes.
Because that's something the Black Spiral Dancers do regularly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read a tiny bit about them, but I was just, it just reminded me of the Furcus, which is why I went to vampires.
Well, yeah, here at the bottom of examples of cairn sites, a chapel, temple, or other site holy to human faiths in the past, but abandoned by them and restored by Guru who recognize the place's spiritual resonance.
So yeah, the Furcus does say the Veil, which I guess is the Shadowlands or whatever now, because I couldn't remember what it was called. But I wonder if that could be something. But oh yeah, there we go. Today, cairns are precious. Many have been lost. The thralls of the worm have taken once proud cairns for their own purposes, or have construction their own near such sites.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's absolutely, that's a fun line of thought.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
I don't know how I feel about like the urban ones, because it doesn't feel fully in place, but obviously they had to give, urban Guru something.
Yeah, a cellar beneath the capital streets, now walled off from the hotel to which it was previously attached, that once had bootleg adult beverages during the Prohibition era. That
it does make sense though, because that would have been a beacon for hope and happiness for those people.
True.
So, like, it makes sense, but yeah, not my favorite thing about the book.
Yeah.
Or the penthouse residence of an extremely well-to-do urban werewolf, construction of glass and steel to resemble a geoistic eye. Like, yeah, that could be a focusing point, and like that's how you could play it up there. But that doesn't. What?
It's very situational. It really only works if you're doing that particular one. Really only works if you're doing something with like the glass walkers. And very, very, very urban settings.
Yeah.
But if you're out in
BFE,
middle of nowhere trying to take down an aggregate put in place by Pentex, you're not going to get into someone's cellar or a glass skyscraper or whatever.
Well, I'm just saying, like, overall, like, that one, like, it obviously has its place. It's built as a focusing place. It just is, it was weird.
It feels more in line with something they would put in Mage than something in Werewolf, to be honest. Just that specific example.
Right, or the Tremere bullshit.
Maybe. Yeah. Of course, they were mages at one point, but then they downgraded. # fuck the Tremere.
Right. Screw the Tremere. Woo! Anything else about them we want to go over just now?
I'm good to keep going.
Nen?
We can move on.
Fun part.
Yeah, now we're talking about Agents of Entropy, Servants of the Worm. The vampire shit. Along with others. It's not just Kindred.
Definitely, yeah. I will say I've heard Fomori tossed around a lot, but I haven't really read too much about them, so I was very interested to see them featured in this book.
Right, Banes are spirits. Would they be like a wraith?
I guess
believe so.
I guess they could be.
I mean, obviously they're separate, but we don't hear them spoken about in any of the other 2 books.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious if it's.
It might be a specific type of wraith, because it talks about them being warped, and how their mentality is bent towards decay and violence.
Yeah, and right. Where is it? The second paragraph, first paragraph. They're just likely. It just seems like they're very emotionally driven, which is very wraith-like. I would like to do a comparison of the 2 at some point. That would be interesting, I think.
That would.
Yeah, some are inherently malignant, but many spirits turn to distorted aspects of their former purpose or embodiments of destructive concepts. So yeah, it's interesting. But the next one, the Fomori, is just like possessed people. I think, right?
Yeah, humans or other hosts who have been possessed by a bane for an extended period. As tragic as they are dangerous, Fomori seldom agree to the fate to which their bane has twisted them, and even fewer would have if they knew what it would entail.
And then we get to Pentex.
These are the classic bad guys of the werewolf system. Like they've been pretty consistently featured throughout several iterations of the werewolf books.
Yeah. They're basically just one mass mega corporation that owns so much stuff and do everything in their power to kind of like destroy the world.
Mm-hmm. I will say in this iteration, well, in past iterations, it's been pretty clear that they're very firmly aligned with the worm, and they definitely are. And I remember reading about them in previous iterations, and it talking about how it wouldn't be uncommon to see like kindred on the board of directors for Pentex subgroup A or whatever.
Well, this one does have them under agents of entropy, so they're still associated with the worm.
Yeah. But it looks like they're also starting to lean into the Weaver a little bit, which makes sense with the emergence of technology and stuff.
Where are you seeing that?
Later on.
Oh.
Later on.
Okay. No, now we get to the Weaver, I guess, because Pentex was the last one. There's a lot written about Pentex, but it really does go out of its way at the very last paragraph to state most of the employees are just normal people trying to make a living. So they're not bad in and of themselves, but they're enabling the evil, whether they know it or not. Which is really interesting, because if you tell someone that the company, I don't know, one that likes to deliver things where they claim in a couple of days, is endangering like large swaths of land and vast portions of the population and killing out small businesses and things like that, how can you not deal with them still? There really isn't an option in our current way of life.
I believe the phrase that kids use these days is "there's no ethical consumption under capitalism."
Right. So how do you how do you deal with that as a guru? It's interesting.
It definitely is. It's a far more gray, nuanced take than I'd seen come out of a lot of W20 stuff.
Any comments then?
think you guys pretty much touched on everything.
Next is the Weaver. Apparently,
Actually, I'm surprised that vampires didn't show up under the worm category.
I think they're under their own. It's hinted that they've said it that they've had a lot of interactions with them. But they probably just warranted a bigger section than a handful of paragraphs. If they even get to them, I don't know. I haven't fully looked at that.
They do. They do. That screenshot that I posted to the memes chat came from the section about Kindred.
So yeah, now onto the Weaver, which is interesting because apparently there's legends that it went rogue even well before the worm. Which is scary.
A little, yeah.
I can't help but think of a certain web fear aspect.
Yeah, I will say I really like that about. I really like the Weaver from Werewolf because I mean, like, the web and the certain other intellectual property is definitely interesting in what it does and the way it reaches out and does its thing. But
Web's gonna web.
Yep, web's gonna web. But the whole idea of stasis and preserving things as they do, even as the world is trying to move on and devolve and re-evolve and things like that. That is, and maybe it's just because we've been playing vampire for so long, and that's kind of one of the struggles of being a vampire, is being locked in this position of virtual stasis while the rest of the world moves on without you. And what do you make of that, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
So just,
which is, it's weird to me that, so vampires are considered under the worm, which makes sense because they corrupt and all of that, but they are also very much in the Weaver's domain too because of the stasis and not change. But maybe that's kind of where some of these legends come from, where the Weaver and the worm are having some problems, to put it mildly. I don't know, you'd have to tell me about that. It just, the Weaver almost feels like it fits vampires more than the worm.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been conversations about that in fandom spaces that I've seen. Nothing along that line has been addressed officially. Officially, they're still aligned more with the worm and with the decay than they are with the Weaver. But I mean, I totally agree.
It could also be possible they're just associated with a worm because they smell like death to werewolves.
I don't think it's that they smell like death. It specifically stated that they smell like the worm, whatever the worm is.
The corruption.
So, and they do corrupt those around them. Like, you're changing a mortal, you're taking away their free will, you're corrupting them into your viewpoint and things like that, which I totally get, but the biggest aspect of vampires is you do not change. Once you are turned, you can change slowly, maybe, if you're lucky, but you're stuck as you are. And oftentimes, and it's easy to see in people too, once they hit a certain point, sometimes for one reason or another, they're stuck at that mentality, and it's so difficult to engage with them beyond that.
Definitely. And it's a really interesting. I say this a lot, but I just love the World of Darkness lore so much.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the werewolf side of things. I love. But while it's an interesting conjunction of the Weaver and the Worm, because when you think about it, taking a being that is supposed to age and decay naturally out of the cycle of life that it had previously been a part of, that act of stasis in and of itself is a corruption of the natural order, the natural flow of things.
And maybe that is why they are part of the Worm. It just, to me, feels like it's more in the Weaver's domain than the Worm's domain.
Especially with how Kindred are so focused on setting up their little societies.
Yes.
And making allies and enemies, and their obsession with hierarchy and
building
stuff.
Their own networks, ensuring their own safety through alliances and enemies, and like they you build a relationship web when you build a kindred. Like, the people haven't seen ours, but you've seen the ones I've created for ours. Like, it's a sprawling web of everyone we've come in contact with.
It absolutely is.
And I'm sure they have that for Werewolf too, but like, they harp on it so much that Vampire is about the relationships. Be it good or
really
bad or
is.
otherwise. It's about the relationships you make.
It really is. And it's through those relationships that you see either a lot of growth or regression.
Or stagnation.
Or stagnation.
We kind of got off track here, but this is good. I love when we do these nights because we do this.
Yeah.
We need to do this more often.
It's fun, especially when we can really get into it and get excited about it.
Yes. That's weird that they have monster hunters as servants of the Weaver.
I was just looking at it, and I think the mentality behind that was trying to preserve the human race, quote unquote.
I think it says trying to keep things as the way they are as humans perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Right in this sentence, can't have werewolves messing up a billionaire's investments. It's bad for the economy. And what is an economy but a tool, a technology? I get it. Honestly, I would swap hunters and put them under the worm. Personally, if I was going through this. Like, I get why they're the Weaver, but especially, I mean, yes, they would go after vampires and stuff, but they go after the changelings. They go after the werewolves. That's corrupting the natural order.
Mm-hmm.
Using the technology is corrupting. Like, using that to harm the world is the definition of the worm right now.
Especially like when they said, when you're in the billionaire's pockets.
Exactly.
Cough, cough, Pentex.
How is that literally not an agent of the worm? I would swap monster hunters and kindred personally. I doubt we'll ever see that kind of a meta answer, but yeah, we got off track here. But it only has, okay, it has Weaver spirits too, I guess. It only has two things there. Infinite host of spider-like spirits, literally weaving order and inflexibility across the Umbra.
Digital spectral spiders weaving their webs out of
Which
with
is
those 3D printer filaments.
it's bizarre to me because the web is ever changing and constantly moving. It's not static.
Yeah, I will say that is definitely an interesting part of the whole stasis thing, is that these webs do change even though.
Yeah, like technology changes. Technology corrupts. Like, it should be part of the worm.
Mhm.
It pulls you away from the natural world. Look at us, we're in our houses, not being outside. Talking to each other, not face to face.
I mean, to be fair, it is dark and I would get eaten alive by mosquitoes.
I'm just stating the fact that it's taking us away from that kind of life.
Mhm.
You know?
It certainly can, yeah.
I don't know. It really feels like a lot of their choices for the worm and the weaver could be flipped so easily, which also might be a thing. Who knows what happened to the web and the weaver?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm sorry, the web and the worm. Something to think about, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Agents of Chaos. Oh, I guess anything else we want to state about the weaver?
I'm still just picturing spiders weaving webs out of like 3D printer filament. Man, chaos.
Interesting. More than any other time in the past, the Umbra reveals the presence of these spirit spiders, and Garou, moving through the spiritscape, can feel the encroaching threads of the weaver's web, even as they hear the dying howls of Gaia. Well, now I'm just imagining that these threads are holding the decaying world together, which is really, I guess, what they're getting at, because that's what's happening.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just such interesting visualization. Can you imagine coming on a city that's just like in the Umbra, that it's just a ruined scape, and you think, and it's just like there's a shimmer to it, and then you get closer, it's just literally being stitched together by the web.
Y'all be careful, y'all might end up in the Umbra at some point.
Well, we talked about the Halloween game. Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows indeed.
Oh god. Jesus, can you imagine if somehow a vampire, a kindred, got sucked into the Umbra?
They may perceive it differently. Might be the link between the Shadowlands and the Umbra. It's just different in perspective.
I bet the Malkavians could do it.
It is technically different places. The Umbra and the Vale are different. They're connected, but they're different. I don't know if a kindred could cross over to the Umbra, but can you imagine the... I can just imagine a spread of corruption as they step.
Yeah. I remember a while back there was some discussion about, I don't know how much you've read into Golconda, but like the final step of ascension is essentially going on essentially this spiritual quest and just not coming back. And there were some theories put out at the time that in order to achieve Golconda, you had to be able to present as human enough for the Umbra to accept you so that you could travel through it.
So what would happen if a regular kindred went to the Umbra?
They'd probably be driven out by the spirits there, to be honest. If they could even find their way through to it.
Interesting.
Because the Umbra itself may just not let them through.
I'm sure that there is a way to force it.
I'm sure there was, and if anyone could figure it out, it'd probably be a Tremere, but...
I'm just hypothesizing, like, that would be a messed up situation to have to deal with on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I'm thinking Dragon Age.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that too, and I've been trying really hard not to.
With the,
Darkspawn.
And the Veil,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. The Black City. Fun fact, a little bit. I had a very, very similar concept in my D&D world. Very similar. I pulled ideas from it. But yeah, no, I totally had that. It was fun. I love Eldritch Horror, things like that.
It can be a lot of fun.
So yeah, that's Agents of Chaos the Wild now, I guess.
Yep. Speaking of Eldritch Horrors...
Doesn't have a whole lot here.
No, it's a very small overview, but there are some interesting things in here, if you contextualize it in contrast to WtA. This is the first time they mention the Cult of Fenris and the Black Spiral Dancers.
Not by name.
Yeah. Under other werewolves.
Oh, I'm talking about the first 4 paragraphs.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
Literally the Agents of Chaos the Wild.
Yeah.
Which it's cool because it talks about how do you battle a world? How do you battle a tornado? How do you battle a flood? I love these concepts that they throw out here. How might a Guru pack fight back a flood or hurricane? How does one tear the throat out of an idea? How can a memory be disemboweled? Can one beat back creativity into submission? It's I love it.
Good stuff. Good writing.
The meme stuff is but like the writing in this book is amazing.
It really is.
Now we can go to other werewolves. I just wanted to talk about that sentence.
Yeah.
Sentences.
Yeah, now we get into the fun stuff.
Yes, now they're actually talking about other werewolves. Still by name? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Cult of Fenris and the Black Spiral Dancers, respectively. And they also mentioned the Stargazers, but I'm still... I get why, but I don't get why.
You and I will talk about that in the Cult of Fenris after. I don't feel like that's a streaming appropriate thing until we figure out what we're going to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Black Spiral Dancers, though.
Black Spiral Dancers. I don't really know anything about them.
They are the werewolf equivalent to the Sabbat.
Ah. Yeah, that makes sense. That tracks.
About as close as it gets. It's not a perfect one-to-one, but they are werewolves that have been corrupted and twisted into the worm's service. Some by choice, some not by choice.
Can any werewolf become one?
Yes.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to look at that. That's interesting.
As do note that werewolves that have been turned by the Black Spiral are seen as lost for good. There is no coming back from that. No one has done it. And those that have only said it to get back into certain power structures and destroy it from the inside. And they're just marked kill on sight pretty much. after they're corrupted.
Spoilers for Detroit, so close your ears if you don't want to hear this. The reason I'm asking is because Kat has had her Guru Ghoul since very shortly after she came to the New World. And that was established before this book came out, so I'm gonna have to figure out the Black Spiral Dancers now. Potentially.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't use them for that, they're definitely worth looking into, because they're like, they were born out of a pack that essentially the entire pack was corrupted down to a man. Well, not pack, I mean clan?
Tribe,
Thank you. Yes. An entire tribe of Guru was just lost to the worm. And it was a huge shock to the Guru Nation when it happened, because if I'm remembering my old lore correctly, they were back then what the Red Talons are now. They were really fierce fighters, very war-minded. And so because they lived so close to the constant war and violence, they were very easily corrupted and taken hold of. And that's kind of part of why there are Guru that sit back and go, wait a minute. Is this the ethical thing to be doing? Do we really need to approach this with violence? Maybe we do need to be careful here. It's because they're trying to prevent another plan from collapsing.
I like that. That's interesting. That gives a reason to not just rage out all the time. To not continuously be in Krynos form. I like that a lot. But yeah, I'm gonna have to figure that out because Vincent.
Yeah.
Might be a thing. So that's fun.
And the only PC who's met him is not here right now.
Correct. You guys have seen him, but have not met him. Yeah, there's a whole fun backstory there. It's good times. Good times. Yeah. Cat can be vicious. I'll say that. So yeah, I like the sample conflicts. They're very cool. I feel like it would be very easy to pick out a couple of these and make a chronicle for them. Without it having be the same as someone else who has done the same thing.
Listen to this one. A pack of corrupt werewolves has been terrorizing one of the disadvantaged parts of downtown, hoping to drive down property values so an opportunistic real estate developer can acquire the real estate on the cheap. That could fit into either Atlanta or Detroit, let's be honest.
It really could. I kind of want to talk to some of these about Dangle. But we also will have a discussion about splats, I think, soon. At least I think so.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth bringing up.
I mean, we're playing 2 of 3 so far, so maybe we'll see. That's talk for later.
I love how modular World of Darkness is. I really do.
It's so unique in that respect. I love that. We'll get to that in character creation, but oh man, I love this so much. Oh god, we've only hit chapter 2 and we've been going for over an hour now. That's fine.
Maybe we should. Yeah.
That's fine. Well, I believe someone will be joining us relatively soon, right?
Hopefully. I mean, he said 10 minutes, so...
No, I think he meant 10 o'clock.
Oh,
which would be in 10 minutes now.
Yeah.
He told me potentially 10:30 his time. Well then, do we want to just keep going over things for chapter 1 and see if he gets here in 10 minutes before moving on to chapter 2 and potentially cutting things short?
Yeah,
that way we have a good.
Good solid, yeah. And this whole chapter has been a really nice primer for the rest of the book, I think. And I think that is we mentioned it earlier, but I definitely think that's something that has lacked in other V5 iterations.
Yes.
And even the 20th anniversary stuff, like they open with like these 6-page comic book essentially, which I mean were cool, but they didn't really work as a very in-depth, it doesn't have to be in-depth if it's a primer obviously, but you know what I mean. It wasn't,
it gave you samples of a tiny bit of in-universe, but not what is happening. Yeah. This new way of doing it, at least here, touches on the meta, gives you ideas, explains a few things, and then moves on. I like it a lot. I know it's not going to happen. I would not be upset of a rewrite of Vampire 4 book in this style.
They might.
So that's what
if this gets enough traction. Yeah.
But it still wasn't not the same way because they left out a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I think they said they won't be doing a rewrite, but I would not be upset with a rewrite of it in this style, including everything.
Yeah, I hope they keep this going forward, especially if they're going to continue doing 5e updates
WAD 5
to the rest of the world.
It's been interesting. That's what I'll call it from now on, so we don't get confused with 5th edition or Vampire 5.
WAD 5. I like it.
It is what it is.
It is indeed.
So let's see. Ooh. There's a lot that you can do with this, even just from chapter 1. It gives so many ideas that you can do. Both in their actual blurb ideas, but also just in what's written. We've spent an hour and 25 minutes talking about this in one chapter, less than 30 pages, or just over 30 pages.
It's definitely worth a look.
I agree.
The Void has joined us.
The Void is here.
We welcome the Void.
The Veil, it's the Veil.
Ah!
No, I'm just obfuscated.
Quick, it's the worm. Are you joining us on our talks, or shall we do the other thing? I would only have maybe an hour and a half, so I will leave that up to you guys. There's a potential of getting it done, there's potential of not getting it done. We can speed things along, but...
Personally, I think we should continue talks.
I don't know where anybody is, so I might not be very additive. But
It's okay. We only finished. Yeah.
And that was speeding through things, but we got talking.
Fun
times.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to do either. Keep talking about this or play a little bit.
Either way, I need a moment, and I'm gonna swap out my headphones, so like the sound's gonna get wonky for a minute, but I'll mute it.
Okay.
Because I needed my other ones to charge because they were at like 70%. So I'll be back in a minute. Talk amongst yourselves, I guess.
Never. Apologies.
All good. Things happen. So have you gotten to read through the werewolf stuff at all?
No.
It's okay. Chapter 1 was just kind of a brief overview of just about everything else in the rest of the book. It's a very nice little primer. And that's kind of why it took so long, is because it hit on so many different aspects of werewolf.
Yay, Garoo.
Lots of fun. Lots of fun.
But yeah, no, I absolutely have not. Good Lord. I absolutely have not been able to read through it yet, so.
So do you want to roll some dice, or do you want to keep talking with us, or what you feeling?
What does everyone else want to do? Because I am the latecomer, so.
I mean, I kind of want to finish it off. But if we want to keep talking, I'm okay with that too.
I can hear again. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Sound's still picking up right. Everything
Yes.
is the way it
Good.
is.
Good.
What'd I miss?
I was just asking Dangle about how much of the werewolf stuff he's gotten to take a look at. Said not much really, and I filled him in on what chapter 1 was, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
I
to.
have lightly skimmed, and that's it.
Yeah, I got to look at the table of contents, and that's it.
Cool. Good times.
Yeah.
You should listen to the first hour and a half. We've had some interesting things brought up.
Never.
No. Okay,
I don't
so I
listen
guess
to
we
our
are.
stuff.
I know. No one does. It's fine.
us have opinions? Absolutely not.
I know, right? So yeah, it was some interesting discussions, ideas, and things to bring up later, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I guess we won't be playing today. It was an option, but that's fine.
Like I said, I'm not going to be able to really add a whole lot to Werewolf, so I
You
can sit
think
here.
that. You think that.
Oh, I know that.
I've been making do so far.
I know practically nothing about this game, and there's been a lot of interesting discussions.
It's been a lot of theoretical, ooh, what if this, ooh, I like that because this. Not much in the way of mechanics yet. Of course, that might change as we move into chapter 2. If we are, in fact, moving into chapter 2.
I am leaving it up to the player's choice. Nen says no.
I mean, if we're doing Detroit, I might be fine. I thought we
Yeah,
were
that's what
going
we
to do
would
like
do.
a super quick Nicole scripted sketchers.
No.
Nah, the plan was Detroit, finish up Detroit. So I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I'm good with playing as well.
Okay. Thanks for joining us on our chapter 1 talk of Werewolf the Apocalypse. If you guys, well, whoever, whatever, we have one viewer. So, enjoy us discussing chapter 1. We'll be moving on to finishing up Detroit. Thanks.